Hi guys, so this is summer term task 2 and we're going to continue our journey into research methods. We're going to look at questionnaires, and our questions are great, aren't they? I mean, my wife asked me the other day, why does everything have to be a game with you? And I said, excellent question, just use your buzzer next time. I'm kidding, that was a joke. I don't actually talk to my wife. Oh, hi honey. Okay, so this video is going to work a little bit differently than the last one, in that what I'm going to do, I'm going to send you the Word document that's attached to this email, and you're basically going to use the video to make notes. So that's going to be the first activity, really the first task of this summer term task 2. 2.1, I'm going to call it task 2.1, is to use the video to make notes. So there's a couple of different sections. You need to make notes on what questionnaires actually are, and so listen to the rest of the video and hear me talk about that, and because it's a video, it's quite helpful. You can pause it to make notes. You can go back and listen to me again if you're not sure what I said, that kind of thing. But basically, make notes on what questionnaires are. You're then going to use the PowerPoint to fill out the example box on the Word document. And then you're going to look at the advantages and disadvantages of questionnaires and listen to what I say about the different kind of practical, ethical, theoretical strengths and weaknesses, and note those down as well. Okay, and then after that, there's a few more activities that need to be done. Okay, so questionnaires. So what they are, they're a type of social survey. Now, there's a few different research methods that count as social survey, but they're essentially a method of getting a lot of data from a wide group of people. So they tend to be a set of kind of pre-selected questions that then the respondent will fill out an answer, and then that data can be analysed and often turned into a graph. So it's quantitative, very difficult to say. Data is numerical data. So these respondents can generally fill them out themselves, so those would be called self-completion questionnaires, or sometimes the kind of researcher will go through the questionnaire with the respondent, and the researcher will kind of fill out the questionnaire as they go through, which is actually called a structured interview, which we'll look at more in the coming weeks. But like I said, they're generally about getting large quantities of data. So surveys could, be an entire population of a country, or like the census is, or we could easily survey all the students in college. Which recently you had a questionnaire about how this online digital learning stuff was going. So those are examples of large scale, large amounts of data. And because it's large scale data, it's something that's favoured by positivists. Okay, these guys who believe that society is something that's kind of outside of humans, it's beyond people and above people, and it controls people's behaviour. It's a real thing that exists, that's not just in people's minds, and it controls the way people act and think. And therefore, if we're going to study that properly, we need to look at the patterns of what people do. We need to look at the behaviour patterns. And so to do that, we need large amounts of data, large scale data. So that's what questionnaires are. All right, now the next part of the Word document that you're going to fill out is the example. So what I want you to do is open up the PowerPoint that I attached to the email that describes some research by Sue Sharp, and I want you to use that PowerPoint to fill out the example box as an example of a self-completion questionnaire. Okay, so we're going to talk about the strengths and weaknesses now, the advantages and disadvantages of these questionnaires. When we say questionnaires, generally what we mean, or what we have in our head, is what's called a closed question or pre-coded questionnaire. So these are questions that essentially give you yes or no answers, or strongly agree, strongly disagree, very, very set, closed answers, no room for interpretation or elaboration, which would be more of an open question. And that's generally what we mean when we say questionnaires. So practically speaking, as a strength, and remember, whenever we're talking about strengths and weaknesses, you've got to be thinking PET, you've got to be thinking practical, ethical, theoretical. So practically speaking, they're very quick to get a lot of data. They're very cheap, relatively cheap to get a lot of data. and they're pretty easy as well in terms of access, in terms of specialist skills needed, anything like that. Often because they're done via email, social media, whatever it is, they can be quite simple to carry out and to get a large amount of data. They don't take up a lot of time, and particularly when you consider there's software that now does a lot of the analysis for you, or take in the answers for you and tally it all up for you. So in terms of time and ease, they are really quite practical for these self-completion closed questionnaires. They're also have got a strong element of reliability, so theoretical issue reliability, because they can be easily replicated. Any researcher can type up the same questionnaire, send it out to a different sample of respondents, and hopefully get the same answers. So they are easily reliable, or reliability is strong. Also, on top of that, we've got no interviewer bias. We've got no or less opportunity for the researcher to kind of shift the respondents into answering a particular way and encouraging them to answer in a particular way. And they're also representative. Okay, so we can generalize the results because they're large scale. So we could take a large scale study, large scale survey, and say, you know what, this does apply to the majority of the country. We can generalize this to the rest of society because there's been so many people included in this, so many different types of people, all different backgrounds. That means that it is representative. Ethically speaking as well, there's comparatively little ethical issues as long as you make sure that there's kind of confidentiality so that people's responses aren't made public, or they have to keep anonymity, they have to be kept anonymous. Then generally speaking, there's hardly really any ethical issues, particularly when you compare it to other research methods. So overall, it's quite a favourable method of research, particularly for positivists. So here's another theoretical issue. Positivists, they find that the large-scale quantitative data means that we can actually kind of prove the cause and effect that they're looking for, so that we can draw a proper scientific conclusion. So another theoretical positive there for the positivists. Okay, so we're going to look at the weaknesses now, the weaknesses or disadvantages of using questionnaires. Practically speaking, what can be one of the biggest issues is what's called a low response rate. So it might be that only like 4 or 5% of the people that you send the questionnaire to actually carry out the questionnaire and send it back. So it could be that there's some implications there. You might have to kind of offer a reward or a prize. Often you'll get that with the questionnaire. You complete this and you'll be entered into a prize draw for something. And so there could be a kind of money cost to it. It could be the extra time that it's going to take to have to send it to the extra number of people in order to get the right number of responses. So there's some practical implications there, practical issues there. Theoretically as well, there could be the issue of validity. Validity remembers the idea of whether something's true or not. Are we getting the true picture, the true meaning from our research? And what could be happening with questionnaires is that there could be what's called leading questions. A question that's written badly that could lead the respondent to a particular answer or a particular way of thinking. Questions should be completely kind of unbiased and neutral. Sometimes they can be written badly and be leading questions. For example, a question could be, why do you think promiscuous sex is wrong? That's a leading question because it's taking the respondent to the point of view that promiscuous sex is wrong in the first place, whereas they may not think that. And therefore we wouldn't be getting a valid picture of their opinion, of the true picture of their opinion. So validity could be an issue. Another issue could be ethics. It could be that if, let's say, we're researching a sensitive topic, for example, we're researching crime, and we could be asking questions about, let's say, if we're asking the parents of criminals whether they did anything that they think might contribute to their child becoming a criminal, becoming a murderer, whatever it happens to be. That's a very sensitive topic that wouldn't be best dealt with in a very impersonal questionnaire. It'd be much better done with more face-to-face, where you can build up a rapport and have empathy and make them feel that you're on their side and things like that. So there can be ethical issues there. As well, I've already mentioned the idea that you've got to keep things confidential, ethically speaking. Now, other weaknesses, the weaknesses I've described already. Those can mainly be sorted by having a very well-designed questionnaire, by writing a very simple, clear instructions, clearly written questionnaire that doesn't have leading questions and that kind of thing, that isn't about sensitive information. So these issues, these pet issues that I've described, can be overcome generally by having a very well-written questionnaire. So when you're writing an essay, you want to be using that as kind of evaluation, actually, that yes, there are some problems, but they can be overcome quite easily. Particularly, you want to be mentioning the idea of a pilot survey, so like a trial run where you can iron out, discover these potential problems and iron out the issues. It's something that researchers regularly use to make sure that their questionnaires, the actual proper ones, are the best that they can be. Now, the biggest problem with questionnaires really would come from a criticism from the interpretivist point of view. So they challenge the positivist, they go against it, and you can always use them and play them off each other when you're discussing research methods. So the interpretivists say that in order to get anything real and meaningful, we've got to look at how the participants or respondents themselves understand it. What do they mean by X, Y, Z? Because these interpreters, remember, they don't see the society in the same way that positivists do. They see it as basically a construction of our minds. It's something that's inside of us or made by us, and therefore we need to look at the meanings we have, because that's the only thing that's real, rather than it being something separate from us, which is what the positivists believe. So for them, the interpretivists, they say the important thing is that you need to be able to get at the real meaning. And these closed questionnaires, they just don't do that. You can't get to the heart of the matter, the meaning, with a yes/no answer or a strongly agree 1 to 5 answer. What you need to do is, and what you again, here's another tip for discussion and evaluation in an essay. You can say if the researcher was more of an interpretivist, they could use open questions, allow respondents a lot more freedom to elaborate and really get at the heart of what they mean then, and so that would allow more data. That's qualitative, not quantitative, and therefore interpretivists would prefer that and find that more useful. But their criticism of those closed questionnaires is you're just not getting any data that actually gives you any meaning. You're not getting the Verstehen. You can't put yourself in the other people's shoes and understand what they're going through, and therefore what you're getting isn't really very meaningful. However, having said that, if you did make your questionnaire a more open question, then there's some practical considerations. So it's a bit of a point-counterpoint situation. Practical considerations will be a lot more time consuming to try and analyse. You can't just have a computer work that out. You'd have to read through the detailed answers yourselves. So it would take a lot longer, which means it would cost more money because you'd need to be paying people to do it, obviously. So there's practical issues with it as well. Okay, so that's task 2.1, is making all those notes from the previous bits of this video. Task 2.2, and the perhaps more interesting task, is you've learned all about questionnaires. Now you're actually going to go and carry one out. You're going to design one and carry one out. So what I want you to do is create a 10-question questionnaire. 8 of those questions are going to be closed questions, so they can be yes/no answers, or they can be like 1 to 5 or agree/disagree answers. And then 2 of those questions are going to be open, where you give space and allow the respondent to go into as much detail as they can or want to in order to get to the real heart of the meaning there. So I want those 10 questions, and I want it where you have at least 10 responses. So you're going to need to send it out to friends and family as many as you can, email, social media, whatever. But I want it sent out and I want 10 respondents to come back to you. So I want 10 sets of data in a results table, and I want a conclusion drawn. I want you to draw a conclusion about the data that you've received and analysed. The whole questionnaire, the topic's going to be on what makes people happy. I want you to find out what people at the moment, society at the moment, what makes them happy. So you draw up 10 questions to do with that, send it out, get the responses, put them in responses into a results table, send me the results table and a conclusion that you've drawn from that. Okay, that's task 2.2. I want that done by the end of Sunday. All right, look forward to seeing it.